Welcome to the Private Practice Startup, where we inspire you from startup to mastery. We chat with entrepreneurs, experts in the mental health and business arenas, and successful private practitioners to give you the tools needed to make your dream practice a reality. Visit theprivatepracticestartup.com for awesome resources, free trainings, and so much more. Here are your hosts, Dr. Kate Campbell and Katie Lemieux.
Hello, Startup Nation. Welcome back to another episode of the Private Practice Startup Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Katie Lemieux, here with my business partner, who actually you have not been here for a few of the podcasts. I've had to do it solo and with guests, so it's good to have you back.
I know, it's good to be back. I had some family emergency issues to take care of and had to fly to Houston to go to MD Anderson. Luckily, everything is okay, and I appreciate my partnership with my BP business partner. She's amazing, and she just took the reins and took care of things, and it was so nice to be able to depend on her for that. So Startup Nation, it is good to be back.
Woohoo!
Yes.
And we have a special guest today, and actually this guest got a shout out on one of our other podcasts when we were talking about Profit First with Laura Long and Ernesto Segismundo. And then I had the opportunity to chat with her and understand how she created this group practice. I'll just call it an empire because what she's up to is crazy and I love it. So we just want to welcome Maureen Werrbach all the way from Illinois.
Hi, how are you guys?
Hi.
Good, Maureen. How are you?
So this is interesting because we've had podcasts with people, or with our guest experts in vaults and in closets and guest bedrooms and all sorts of stuff. And today, Maureen is podcasting from her house because she's actually snowed in. So this is our first snowed in podcast. She's up in Chicago, and you have how many inches of snow there right now?
I don't know, I think just over a foot, but it looks like we're going to be getting another foot between now and Saturday at 9 a.m, they say.
Wow.
Yeah.
I remember with our previous podcast with Melvin Verghese. Did I say his name right?
Yeah.
Verghese, yes. So when we were having our podcast with him a few months ago, he was saying what inspired him to go in a different direction and build Selling the Couch and his online therapist directory and all of those things was a big, huge snowstorm that he had in Philly. So he got snowed in and was realizing, wow, I can't go in and see my clients. I need to think differently about this. And that kind of expanded his practice in a different way. So how do you handle that, just out of curiosity, when you get snowed in up there with 2 feet of snow?
Yeah, we cancel and we can do video sessions if our clients want that. So I know today the few therapists that are in my office canceled. The clients ended up canceling. I don't know if the therapists would have canceled last minute or not, but we were preparing. We've known about the snow for the past couple of days. So clients were already saying, let's hold off a few days ago. Yeah.
And that's where you got to love the technology-assisted counseling, being able to offer that as a resource when you are snowed in or something crazy that happens.
Yeah, the only worry is that the snow messes with the internet and all of that.
Yeah.
So as long as that keeps working, but hopefully I'm hoping that because Chicago knew this was coming, the people who are doing the streets and all of that were prepared. We're not known to be very prepared, and even though they'll tell us that it's snowing 2 feet, they'll not have the people out there taking the snow out. And so we'll see how it works today. I haven't yet gone outside past my street, so we'll see if it gets shoveled and all of that.
Gotcha.
So we're sending some warm vibes your way.
Thank you.
So before we get into all of that, we wanted to welcome our first-time listeners. If you're a first-time listener, we're opening our arms and saying welcome to Startup Nation family. We're so happy you're here. If you're a loyal listener, thank you for coming back. So last week, we had the cool opportunity to talk with Jessica Richards, who is, she's now an LMHC, but she actually started in private practice as an intern. So we're going to be talking about her journey from intern to licensed mental health professional and some of her tips and tricks and things to be mindful of on the way. And also, if you are a new Startup Nation family member, we have a gift for you. Head over to privatepracticestartup.com. Right there on the homepage, you will see Kate and I with a very nice beach scene, very different than snow. And right there is an opportunity to grab a copy of your A to Z cheat sheet, the essentials for building and growing your dream practice. And of course, we're in Facebook. Who else is not in Facebook? You can always join our group there and hang out with us as well. So another thing, our sponsor today is the Private Practice Startup. So our sponsor today is our paperwork. So Kate and I have worked over a decade creating paperwork that is ethical, competent, legal, so you can avoid legal issues and really continue to do the work that you love. We have our paperwork in a la carte as well as package items. And you can also try out our paperwork. You can test drive our HIPAA form for free. So head over to privatepracticestartup.com and head over to the shop tab. There you will find private practice paperwork. So without further ado, let's jump into Maureen's topic. And so Maureen has actually a very successful group practice. So her topic is the two-pronged approach to group practice marketing.
Yes, I'm so excited to be here with this podcast with you and to have you on, Maureen, because I also have a group practice down here in South Florida, and I'm so curious about your business model and how you have your group practice set up, because I saw in your notes about your show today that they're actually employees of your at your practice, so they're not independent contractors; they're employees.
Yes, I have 20 or so that are employees, and they're all therapists, and then I have 2 independent contractors. One does medication management and one does psych testing. And so they have their own solo practices as well. And they just come in, do med management or psych testing, and then sort of go back to their own practice. But all the employees are the therapists in my practice.
That's fantastic. 20. Wow. And a couple of independent contractors too. So are they full-time employees or some part-time or mixed?
Most of them are full-time. I'd say probably about 13 or 14 are working at least 20 hours. And then the minimum that I require to work in my practice is 15 hours. Okay. So anyone who's part-time is working at least 15 hours.
Wow, that's awesome. Yes, you have built an empire. That's a good
Yes, that's amazing, right?
So what inspired you to build a group practice and to go with the particular business model that you went with?
I sort of was winging it. It was not in the plans when I first started. I had worked at a group practice, and it was really far away from my house, a little over an hour. So I didn't like the commute. But I also wanted to be able to be creative in how I did my work and just the decoration and all that. So I decided to start solo. And then about 6 months later, I hired my first person. So I was only solo for about 6 months before I brought someone in. And like I said, it was 6 years ago. So it was before there were Facebook groups to kind of help you start and scale your practice. So I kind of was winging it and didn't really fully think it through. And it wasn't until about 6 months after I had hired my first person, who essentially just worked the days that I wasn't there. So we never even saw each other. Chicago had a small business plan competition through the Department of Treasury, and I did that, and that was what made me put a business plan together. And that's kind of how I figured out that going the route of having some more people and having this like family style collaborative space was what I wanted. So that's when I went in that direction and started hiring more people.
That's awesome.
How cool.
Yeah, very cool.
What were some of the considerations you needed to make and some of the things that you've learned along the way in regards to having employees, a group practice, all that stuff?
I think the biggest thing was the whole independent contractor and employee thing. I started out having independent contractors, and it wasn't until I had maybe 4 or 5 therapists, so maybe a year into being a group practice, that I realized the structure that I really wanted for my group and the feel that I wanted meant that I needed to have employees. So that was a fun journey to figure out how to make that change, especially when I didn't have any friends or people that I knew that had group practices. So I had to sort of figure it out on my own. I think that was the biggest initial challenge. And then on top of that was just putting together, an employee manual and my policies and procedures and all that fun stuff, which we have in our heads when we're solo practitioners, but we can also, kind of wave things and say, nah, don't worry about it this time, because there's no one else there. Like, who's going to get mad at you?
Right.
But it gets a little more difficult. The more therapists you have to have all these different ways of doing something. And so I think the other thing was, putting that together and the time it took to process why we do it this way versus that way, because we all have different ways of doing things, and just making everything streamlined was probably the next biggest thing that I had to work on.
I'm so curious about that process of transitioning your independent contractors to employees. Can you talk a little bit about how you approached that and just what that was like?
Yeah. So I was really nervous, obviously, just because there's, this idea that as an independent contractor, you have all this freedom, and that if you switch them to employees, that they feel like their freedoms are being taken away in that sense of how they do their work and stuff. So luckily, in my case, I really didn't want to be this micromanaging person. So a lot of what they were doing wasn't going to change anyways. But I had decided when I was looking at, the structure of the way they are as independent contractors, really needing to do the work on their own, not getting supervision, paying for their own supplies, all of that kind of stuff. I realized that, one of the things that I wanted to do with having employees was to be able to offer incentives and to be able to have, supervision if needed, someone to bounce ideas off of. And so I kind of pitched it in that sort of way was, I am needing to make this switch to employee status, because the way that I envision running my business, it won't connect with having independent contractors. This is what I see the future looking like. This is my plan in terms of incentives. And I said, there's certain things that as an independent contractor, one, you guys are all supposed to be working in your own private practices or contracting your work out to other group practices. And at the time I had known that a couple of them were, stay-at-home moms who just wanted to work 15 hours in private practice, but weren't working anywhere else. So in that sense, we weren't running by the IRS definition anyways. And so aside from that, I had said I want to be able to offer retirement plans and, bonuses and incentives and things that I can't do if you're independent contractors. And so luckily that, on top of the fact that we were very family feelish anyways, really a good set of personalities, everyone was on board with it and thought that makes total sense.
Yeah, and I was wondering that question myself in regards to independent contractor versus employees. And Kate and I, not only do we have our private practice paperwork, but we have some business paperwork, and we've done a lot of research in regards to employee versus independent contractor. We get a lot of questions about that. Like people usually think like, oh, I'll just hire independent contractors. But, there's certain stipulations and things that an independent contractor would have to meet versus an employee, and that you had mentioned about the IRS, right? And so one thing is if you hire someone as an independent contractor, but they're really an employee, you can be fined by the IRS. So it's really important that people, even listening to this podcast and you're thinking about having group practice or independent contractors, is really get that information. We actually got a hold of a really great document that goes state by state and talks a little bit more about the laws. And so, if you're in that boat or whatever, and you want that document, just email us. We're happy to send that out to you, but definitely talk to an accountant, business attorney. Those types of people will always be really supportive in helping you guys really create the practice of your dreams. So that's super cool. I mean, I could probably jump in and continue to talk about all these little pieces because we're so curious. But I know, and another question is how have you marketed it? How have you been able to keep so many therapists full?
I think I always like to say that it's almost like a snowball effect. The more therapists that I have, the easier it is to step back on some of the marketing that I do, because we just become a little bit more visible in the community the larger we get. So when it was just myself and one other therapist, we were getting, a couple of referrals a week. Now we're a little over 100 a month. And I never did any more work than I was doing when I first started. And so it just kind of organically, I feel like, happens the more people that you hire, especially if you're hiring good people, is that you just become more visible in the community, and you have a higher likelihood of people calling your place over someone else,
So what has been your approach to marketing the practice?
Yeah. I feel like there's a difference between how you market when you're solo versus how to market as a group practice owner. One of the biggest issues that group practice owners say, especially when they first start, is that, and they have one or two clinicians working for them, is that people call and want to see them and have a hard time, being transferred over to another therapist in their practice. And they really just want to see the owner of the group or the individual clinician. And so one of the things that I found to be really useful is looking at it from a sort of two-pronged approach, one being direct and one being indirect marketing. And so when you become a group practice, when you're solo, I should start when you're solo. When you're solo, you're doing both. You're doing the face-to-face marketing, which is that direct marketing, meeting with other therapists in the community or primary care physicians or chiropractors or whatever wellness providers would potentially have your clients. But you're also doing that indirect marketing, which is the SEO, the blogging, the Facebook, having social media account. You're doing it's because it's all going to you. But when you're a group practice owner, doing it all actually kind of goes against you because you'll continue to get people who want to come and see you. And so I found that splitting that direct and indirect marketing, so that face-to-face versus that back-end non-face-to-face marketing, is really sort of important in our, being a group practice owner. And so my suggestion is, and what I've found to work, is that the direct face-to-face marketing should fall more, not saying that you should get rid of it completely as a group practice owner, but should fall more on the clinicians. I use the example, I have a CADC in my practice, so a certified drug and alcohol counselor. I don't work with that population, and I don't even know how to explain what she does other than she works with people in addictions. And so I like to use that as an example of if I went to a residential rehab facility nearby and tried to talk to them about this great therapist that I have, who's a CADC. She likes working with them. I don't exactly know what she does with them, but she, loves working with them. It's less likely that that rehab facility is going to refer people versus if she was to go and show how passionate she is and say, I'm a CADC, this is what I like to do, this is how I work with clients who have this sort of addiction, this is how I work with this population, she's more likely to get those referrals. And so as a group practice owner, teaching and coaching your clinicians to be able to market themselves, so that one, I like to look at it as, I have a brand, my group practice, but I also want my clinicians to be their own sort of mini brand in a way. It's not all about them being invisible and it's just my practice and trying to fill them up. I want them to also be known as the go-to person for drug and alcohol counseling, or the go-to person for, trauma work, whatever that is. And so getting that direct face-to-face marketing more in the hands of the clinicians helps bring clients over. And we see this when each month we have a goal of going and doing one speaking engagement in the community. So once a month we have one place that we go to, and one of our clinicians does it. And I find that every time they go out and do that speaking engagement, they're getting a handful of referrals within a day or two afterwards because they saw that person. If I was the one doing all of that, they would just be like, I saw Maureen and she's the owner of Urban Wellness, and I really want my son to see her. I don't see kids. They'll still try to come see me, And so that's kind of where I go with that direct face-to-face marketing. That doesn't mean that us as group practice owners don't need to do that. I find that networking is really important as a group practice, but you're then able to market your brand more than yourself individually. That's the first prong.
That's amazing. Where did you get all your business sense from? Like, I
don't. My husband was talking to me about this yesterday. He's like, so, you should write a book about how you don't even need to go to college to be an entrepreneur. And I was like, I was actually thinking I should go back and get my MBA just for the hell of it, because it'd be, I'm doing it. Why not? And he's like, I don't know I'm sure there's something you'd learn about it, but you're kind of figuring it out on your own. I don't know. It's just trial and error. And then thinking about, why is this working? I don't, and then I just was sitting there thinking, what am I doing that is making this work? Or what am I not doing that is making this work? I don't know. And I kind of figured this out, that at least with the marketing piece, that when I shifted to having the clinicians do more of that face-to-face marketing, and for me to stop doing that, that clients were calling specifically asking for, one therapist or another, which is ideal in my case. I really would love for people not to call and say, I'll see anyone who's open. I'd much prefer that they say, you have a therapist, Andrea, I wanted to see her.
Yeah, I love it. And I just love the fact also that you're teaching clinicians such amazing skills that if they want to go open their own private practice eventually down the road, that they know what to do. That's just invaluable. I appreciate what you've done. Definitely for our field and those that you touched. I think it's awesome. So awesome.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So what's the second prong?
Second prong is indirect. So that's all that back end sort of marketing. It's usually the digital marketing, even though we sometimes still do some print marketing, but that can be anything from blogging, doing, maintaining your website, making sure that it looks good, is easy to navigate. As a group practice, it's a little more difficult to get all of the stuff in there and in a way that is easy to navigate. It's a little bit easier when you're solo because it's just all of the pages are about you. SEO, advertising, whether it's print or, Google AdWords or Facebook ads, social media, if you are on social media as a business, just content creation and making sure that you're maintaining that. E-courses or e-books. I mean, the list kind of goes on in terms of what you can do as a group practice in terms of that back-end marketing. But this is where you as a group practice owner can shine in that sense, because you're not really the face of it then. They don't see what you're doing, and so they're not necessarily going to come out and want to see you just because you're doing that indirect marketing. And so with that, it's less of the clinician's work and more of my work or your work as a group practice owner. When I think of this though, because there's so many things that you can do, I always like to tell people to just start with one, because there's literally, you can try to maintain, update your website, get SEO up to date, do Google AdWords and Facebook ads and set up all these social media accounts, and you'll just really be overwhelmed. And so I like to say to start with the one piece that doesn't seem overwhelming to you or seems like the least overwhelming to you, and to start with that and kind of go from there. So that's my second prong, is the indirect, which I guess you can really go deep with it.
And I love that you say start with one. I remember, early on, it was kind of like running after all the shiny objects. Oh, LinkedIn, what should I do with that? I'll do, okay. Post things. Okay, great. I'm not getting any clients. What should I do with this? Okay. You know what I mean? It was just as I hear you talking about it, I'm just remembering my exhaustion during those times.
Yeah. It's really important to have a strategy for sure and not overwhelm yourself, because there are a lot of shiny objects out there.
And the other thing with that with any form of indirect marketing, it's almost like a long haul game. Nothing you do is going to give you immediate ROI. And so a lot of people will blog for a month and then be like, no one's called and said that they've found me because of my blog. And so then they'll fall off with the blogging and just do it once a month or every couple months. Or with social media, they'll put they'll set up a Facebook account and then put some inspirational quotes up every once in a while, but then be like, I no clients is calling because of that. Social media is a whole nother game. There's a big strategy when it comes to, you need to be posting several times a day and different types of content, which is why using a social media manager like Meet Edgar is what I use, or Hootsuite, but it all becomes a little bit more complicated. So that's why starting with one thing is really important, because that you have to do that one thing pretty intensely for it to start to have that ROI. And
yeah, I was going to ask you, what are some of the systems that you've put into place to support such a big group practice?
So we do blogs, and with the blogs, although it's the indirect side, my clinicians actually do them. And so I have a bonus system in place. Every 6 months, they can get a bonus if they blog twice. And because there's 20 of them, if all 20 of them blog twice, that's 40 blogs in a 6-month period. Some of them don't do it because they don't want the bonus, and that's totally fine. But for the most part, we get enough blogs to last us once a week throughout the whole year, because I have that bonus system. And what I like about that is it's another touch point for the client who potentially wants to call to be able to hear the voice, so to speak, of their ideal therapist. So if they look at any one of our therapists' bios and reads it, but wants to know a little bit more about them and like how they do their work, if they go over to our blog page where they have tags by each therapist's name, they can click on that therapist and read all the blogs. And my clinicians all write blogs specific to their ideal client. So our clinicians are pretty niched down. And so if they work with addictions, all their blogs are related to addictions. If another person's niche is working with kids, they do all kid-related blogs. So that's the blog end. Everything else is more on my end. And so I do have a Google AdWords person. So I used to do it myself. It was really hard. It's not something that I suggest trying to figure out yourself. But when you have the funds, it might be useful to try things like this out, Facebook ads or Google AdWords. the one thing I do want to suggest with it is that you have some sort of metric system so that you can see if it's a good investment or not. Because a lot of people will, do these things, but then not have some sort of way of tracking the metrics of what they're doing. And so, for me, we have a system with our receptionist who makes sure to check how people were found or how they found us. And then we also have things on our website that kind of like we have Pixel Me, which if anyone clicks on the links, it tells us where they came from. I mean, you can get pretty complicated with it. But that's, the route we sort of went so that we could figure out, how what things people were using, Facebook or Google ads or whatnot to find us. And that lets me know if something doesn't give us a lot of return on investment, we stop using it. Mm-hmm. It's not about trying to do all of them. It's, picking a handful of things. So for us, it's our social media Facebook page. We have a Facebook page that posts 2 to 3 times a day, and we use Meet Edgar for that. So it automatically recycles content. I have a Facebook ads manager. So a girl that does all my Facebook ads, and she does all this A/B testing, which, I don't know if you guys, I'm assuming you guys know about that, but
we know all about it.
Yeah. It's another important,
all the way to Z.
Yeah. Right? I know sometimes when I look on my Facebook, I have like 7 of the same ad with just a little bit of different text on there. And so that's, another thing to think about if you are doing any sort of social media ads, whether it's on Facebook or on Google AdWords, to really be successful, because you might think your ad is really good, but that doesn't mean that other people think it is doing things like this A/B testing, which just takes a lot of work, and figuring out, which image is the one that people like to look at most, which first sentence do people prefer. And so that's the kind of the work that I do with my social media people and the virtual assistants I have that kind of help me with that.
Awesome. I mean, there's so much
for days about all of this. We really could. And it's so cool to hear your perspective and the unique aspects about your group, and then how you have learned so much just through your experience, which is very similar to what we've done as well, just learning along the way. And it's a great tool to be able to do that. Which is why we're so passionate about making sure everybody else doesn't have to learn the hard way too, right? And so that's what inspires you in helping other group practitioners or practitioners who want to launch a group practice to know how to do that without having to learn for years and years and years the hard way, right?
Right, exactly.
And just out of curiosity, do you have are you an insurance based or a hybrid or a self-pay? What's the name of the practice?
Yeah, we're a hybrid. We started off in Chicago. It's pretty much impossible to be full fee completely. We're also pretty lucky that we have at least Blue Cross that pays pretty much the same rate as what a typical full fee person in our state would charge. So we're kind of lucky in that sense. But that's another thing. I see this a lot on Facebook, is that people don't realize that they can request increases with insurance companies. And that's been like the staple of my job as the business owner, is every year I request increases. So the gap between we've cut down a lot of the lower paying insurances and are in with just 3 insurances now. And they all pay within dollars, literally, of our full fee.
I'm so curious. What does Blue Cross pay up there?
We're not allowed to say.
Oh, you're not allowed to say?
No.
We've never taken insurance.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Against the contract.
It's against the contract.
I didn't know that. See, you're teaching us something new.
Go. You can go on my website and see what my full fee is.
It's so funny.
$140, and just a few dollars.
That's the loophole, Kate.
That's so funny. I'm sure our listeners were like on the edge of their seats, like, did you just ask that? Yes, I did.
I mean, you can kind of guess from what I just said. You're within a few dollars of that, but I don't know. They have it in the contracts that we're not allowed to disclose rates.
That. Yeah, see.
Yeah, but that's what happens when you start your practice. Absolutely no insurance.
Yeah,
you just hand it over. That's why we ask all our credentialing and billing specialists the insurance questions that we don't know. So
that's funny. Yeah.
So Maureen, what do you most want people to take away from your message today?
Well, I guess because we're talking about marketing, is that 1, you don't have to do it all, and please don't try to do it all. And 2 is to have some sort of system or metric in place so that you're not flailing around doing all these different things or doing something for way too long. There's people that use Psychology Today. For me, Psychology Today in our area is the #1 ranked page if you do a therapist search. So for Chicago, it's super useful. But I know there's geographic areas where Psychology Today brings in them in like one client a year, and people continuously are, stay on there, even though it doesn't backlink, so it doesn't actually improve your, ranking on Google or anything. And so they stand there paying $30 a month for years, even though they're getting one client, which I don't think is that great of a ROI. And so is really the second piece is having some sort of metric where you know how to track the calls that are coming in and where they're coming in from, and which methods that you're using for marketing are actually paying off and not, and to cut those ones off that aren't helping, and to put more money into the ones that are.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great piece of advice my business coach gave me. He said, you cannot change that which you do not measure. Right. Yeah. So, and that's what you're saying is really looking at the numbers. And I know sometimes, therapists, like we're more touchy feely, nurturing people. And some of us like really don't like numbers. Right. But it's so important to know where to put that money and also spend your time. Like you said, with the presentations, the speaking, that has a great ROI. And it sounds like it's a no-brainer. It's simple to do. Your clinicians are talking about a subject that they know ridiculous amounts of information on, and really enjoy it. So I love everything you shared. Maureen, do you actually do you like coach people who are looking to go? Yes. Can you share a little bit about that?
So I have at the Group Practice Exchange, I have various ways of being able to help people start or scale their practice, their group practice. And one is with one-on-one coaching. I have some package, a monthly and a 3-month package. I have mastermind groups, which they just started. They're 6 months long. They started in January, so I won't be doing another one until beginning of July when my current ones end. But I have one that is called First Year CEO Mastermind. So it's for people in their first year. And then I have a Scale Your Group Mastermind, which is for people that are established and have at least 3 employees or independent contractors and have been a group practice owner for at least 2 years. And then I have e-courses. So if you prefer to do something self-paced that is on your own, I have the Ultimate Group Practice Startup Masterclass, which is on my website as well. And that is really self-paced. It's 8 or so hours of me talking. I mean, nicely packaged into smaller amounts, but it does everything relating to startup. So if you're new to group practice and wanting to hire, and you prefer not to spend the money on the one-on-one coaching, then the masterclass is really helpful.
Awesome. And that's all at your website, the Group Practice Exchange, right? So So if you're listening to this podcast and you're thinking about group practice or you're in that state, Maureen is a definite great contact. And of course, Kate too. Kate is kind of more of everyone here is their own business. Yeah, so that's kind of your model.
Yeah, my business model, I have independent contractors. And so everyone at my practice, I've got 13 clinicians, actually a registered dietitian joining us and a new clinician. So it'll be 15 this month. And everybody is their own independent private practice, and they rent space from me at my office. So that's how I have it. So basically, it's by the hour. So they rent space by the hour. Yeah.
Cool.
Exactly. When I started it off, I just wanted to really have, keep it super clean and lower risk. And I launched it like 7 years ago at this point. And
the way you're doing it is the best way. I mean, in terms of having independent contractors, it's hands down is having like that subleasing sort of contract is the best way you can go to really, truly have independent contractors. So that's awesome.
Yeah. So it's been working well. I launched it about 7 years ago and love it. And it's a lot of fun. So I'm sure we could talk for days about this stuff, but we've so appreciated you being on with us today. And I know we'll be connecting again in the future. So make sure to check out the show notes for all of the resources and tips that we shared today. And we'll have links on there as well. And we always appreciate when you guys subscribe, rate, and review our show, because we really love to be able to make a difference and share all of the stuff that we had to learn the hard way, all of these resources for practice building, tips, tricks, and hacks, right? And so when you guys subscribe, rate, and review, it actually helps us to broaden our reach, making a difference in more clinicians' lives. So
And next week, you want to join us for Samantha Drazen's podcast. So Samantha has a really cool, I don't know, she started out as an intern, and, a lot of times we are inspired by an issue that we see and a gap that we want to fill. And so as an intern, she really didn't know where to start her private practice. So she's created this really cool space called Co-Space, K-H-O space, or co-community, I think she calls it. And so she's going to be talking to us about her journey, how that happened and how that translated into what she created today to really support an intern or unlicensed person wanting to go into private practice to provide all of their needs, and a licensed person that might just be getting into the startup phase. So you'll want to join us for that. And she's actually here in South Florida. So if any of you guys are in South Florida and are looking for that opportunity, that might be a great opportunity for you. So Startup Nation, have a fantastic morning, day, evening, weekend, whenever you're listening to us. It was a pleasure to have Maureen on. And thank you so much for allowing us to continue to inspire you from startup to mastery. Have a great day.
See you next time. Thanks for joining us on The Private Practice Startup. Visit theprivatepracticestartup.com for awesome resources, free trainings, attorney-approved private practice paperwork, and so much more.